Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director. You should be using them too. So listen to our sponsor shout out, then listen to the podcast. And when you're done, check out these sponsors. You're going to be glad you did. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Go to hometownticketing.com. They are the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. It's digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, and more customization. The hometown team is here to help you make the best online ticketing solution. We also want to thank Gipper, the official social media graphics solution for the podcast. And if you go to Gipper.com, they're going to show you how to create world-class sports graphics to help celebrate your athletes and promote your teams. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 high school and college athletic programs. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to their highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Mobile. Okay. Go to Snap Mobile. Go to snapmobile.com and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to we're going to keep trying this. We want to say thanks to Snap Raise for their support of the podcast. If you're looking for the best online fundraiser out there, stop right here, snapraise.com. We used it at our school with great success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. So if you're looking for a fundraiser, you found it. Snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Go to their website, vitalsignswalloffame.com, and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to show off your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, or simply share your school's most compelling stories, highlight your best student athletes, and bring your school's legacy to life. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Make sure you visit them today. We also want to say thank you to Home Campus. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association management platform for us. And it's a platform that you will use every single day, just like I did. Things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? Communicating with coaches, with parents, with your state association, with kids, uploading rosters, uploading digital forms, you name it. Home Campus is going to help you do it better, faster, and more efficiently. That's homecampus.com. And then we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're missing out. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you. They're going to connect you with the people you already hear from, the ones that want to complain about everything, but they're also going to connect you with the people who support your program. And that's typically about 98%. Imagine having that amount of support, that data, when you're talking with a frustrated parent, or maybe your school board, or even your principal. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to help you take your athletic program from good to great. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going up north. We're stopping in Wisconsin this week, and we're going to be visiting with somebody I call a friend of the show. Our guest today is Jeremy Castleberg. Jeremy is the Assistant Activities Director, and that includes athletics for the Stevens Point area senior high school. He's going to tell us more about that in one of our segments. But Jeremy and I connected online, got to talking, thought he'd be a great guest, and here we are. Jeremy Castleberg, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Hey, Jake, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And it's been a long time coming. I've listened to a lot of your episodes. I really enjoy it. So it's great to be on the show.
Well, thanks for being that long-time listener. And again, that's that allowed you to earn that status of what we call a friend of the show.
Right.
Let's go and jump right into it. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up, maybe take us up through your own college years, and then we'll take a break. But what's the Jeremy Castleberg story?
Oh, there's a lot to it. So I actually am mainly a Wisconsin boy. I grew up in Arcadia, Wisconsin, which is over on the west side next to Minnesota. I grew up on a dairy farm there with my family, and we raised chickens, which people never believe this, but we raised 48,000 chickens every 2 months. So we had a lot of chickens. And then we had a dairy farm as well. So we lived there for the first 14 years of my life. And then my parents decided the day before I went to high school, hey, let's move to Michigan. And they decided to move all the way to Michigan. And I went to a small private school there that had no athletics. So I'll kind of get to that a little bit later. But we had no athletics except for intramurals. And then I went there my whole 4 years. Decided to end up going to a college just south of there, which also did not have athletics, called Andrews University. And I started my path towards psychology at the time. But then I actually decided, you know what, I'm going to switch over. I've always wanted to play sports. It was something that I really had always wanted to do. So I had never played any high school sports. I transferred to University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and I walked onto the football team, right? And so imagine never putting pads on. I walk onto the football team, and then the rest is history. I played there for a couple of years. Ended up playing semi-pro for about 6 years after that. But I really enjoyed my time at UW Stevens Point. It's a great university. Ended up getting my master's from there later in life. But yeah, I went to those. Ended up changing my degree to education and became a history teacher. And then I also have a psych minor. So I use my psychology a little bit for it. And then I still, I'm certified to teach in those subject areas now. But go figure, now that I teach, I actually teach business. I don't even teach history anymore. So, there was a long journey path there, but I actually didn't go right into teaching either. This is a little post college, but I actually was in banking and in the business world for about 16 years before I actually taught, because I like to make the joke that I graduated with a history degree, and so did everybody else. And so there were not a lot of jobs available, but it's worked out really well. I'm back now teaching and love it. And I'm here at Spash and right in central Wisconsin, right near Stevens Point. So it's kind of settled down here.
Well, I want to go back to that high school experience. Okay, no sports. Obviously, you had some athletic ability, playing college football. What was that experience? Did they have PE? Were there? You mentioned intramurals, but what sort of activities and what were the coaches like?
I get asked this a lot, and I will say this: we did have one quasi varsity team. We had a basketball team where we played one game a year. We played the alumni that came back, and we literally went through tryouts. You had to make the team. It was pretty tough to make the team, but we had one game a year, and that was the only team that I really had. That was my first coach, was Skip Han, who was great, and I still look back at a lot of fond memories of things that he taught me. But we had activities like every season we would go through, flag football, and then we'd do volleyball and basketball, and then we'd move into floor hockey, and then we'd go back outside and play baseball. But it was all intramurals, so there was no official, playing other sports, or I'm sorry, other schools, which I would have loved to have done. I was a huge sports kid. I grew up on the farm. I loved football. It was something I always wanted to play, so that's why I eventually took the leap and just transferred to a school that actually had it because I always wanted to play it. And I played receiver. I believe you played receiver as well.
100 years ago, I like to say that injuries and a lack of talent kept me out of the NFL.
So
Um,
you and me
let,
both.
let's let's talk about that college football experience. Now, again, you made that decision to walk on. Stevens Point. That's pretty good level of football. When what was the moment? When did it happen that you said to yourself, and maybe it was the day one, hey, I belong here, or I'm a college football player, or maybe also when did the coaches say, who is this guy? Hey, he can play.
Well, I'll tell you that when I first walked on and I started working out in the off season with the team, I felt like I could compete because athletically, I remember there was a like we did like the test in sprints. And when I tested in, I the one thing I was gifted with was speed. I did have speed. And so right away I was like, oh, I can compete. And then we got into we strapped on the pads, and I'm not joking. The first time I ever went to the locker room, I didn't want to tell anybody that I'd never done this before. So I'm like trying to figure out where everything goes, putting
Right.
it on. And then all of a sudden I get out on the field and you realize really quickly how much you don't know. Like you think you know stuff about it and having watched the game my whole life. And then I realized how much I didn't know. And so I got out on the field and I was thinking too much. And I dropped a lot of passes. I had a lot of mistakes. And there became that creeping doubt of maybe you can't do this. But towards the end of my freshman year, what would be my freshman year, I started to click a little bit, and I was like, you know what, I can do this. This is something I can do, and I gained a lot more confidence. Credit to some of my coaches, but man, early on it was a battle. There was a lot of doubt.
All right. I'm going to have you do one more flashback to
Sure.
your high school. And there's a reason for this. You mentioned all the different sports that you did in PE, and you mentioned floor hockey.
Yeah.
You're in Wisconsin. You should be skating. But when I remember in junior high, our PE teacher would roll out the hockey stuff, for a 3-week unit, and it was Lord of the Flies. I mean,
Mm,
he hardly ever blew the whistle. I mean, there were slapping and high sticking and everything. Um, and yeah, I was right in the middle of it because that's what you did. But
yeah.
in high school, I remember in freshman PE, we had a different teacher, obviously, and he made us do skills. He made us handle the puck. He made us pass. And then when we'd play games, if that stick came higher than your knee on your backswing, that was a whistle and you had to trade with somebody else. There was no slapping. And it was just so much fun. It was a
Yeah.
great game. And as a PE teacher later on, that's how I called it for our kids. And I just love that floor hockey. What are your memories of your floor hockey
Yeah.
days?
I actually really loved floor hockey. I mean, for the longest time, because I grew up in a world that didn't have a lot of athletics, I kind of just that was the way it was as you played floor hockey. Um, I still to this day can't skate. I tried to do it once. My daughter actually now plays floor or ice hockey, and I actually got a concussion doing a parent skate with her because I slipped and fell. But back then, I loved floor hockey. I mean, it was so much fun, and anybody could kind of do it because you didn't have to skate. I still think hockey is one of the most difficult sports because you have to learn how to skate and you have to learn how to maneuver the puck with the stick. But
And you got
I
and you got
loved
to
it.
skate backwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy. Yeah, so I loved it. I really enjoyed floor hockey. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I did have a coach, or not a coach, but a teacher that taught us in PE how to do some of those skills, how to do stick handling and how to pass and shoot. And Mr. Matushik was great. I mean, he was awesome from that perspective. Really rough old guy, but he taught us how to play, which I really loved it. And I agree with you on the Lord of the Flies. It was a scary time as a small child. Like I was a small kid in high school, so it was a scary time with some of those kids that were out there that were huge.
Some of those kids, they were begging for dodgeball instead
Oh
of
my
floor
gosh,
hockey. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
totally.
All right. That could be my next podcast is floor hockey memories from junior high. Um, our guest today is Jeremy Castleberg. He is the Assistant Activities Director at Stevens Point Area Senior High School. That's in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Let's go and take our first break, but we have a lot more coming back, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Go to hometownticketing.com. They are the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. And if you go to hometownticketing.com, their team is going to show you how to set up and sell tickets online, not just for your athletic events, but for things like school plays, concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part: every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager to provide you hands on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Gipper. Gipper's the official social media graphics solution for the podcast. And if you go to Gipper.com, they're going to show you how to create world-class marketing content to help celebrate your teams and promote your athletes. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 athletic programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made simple. How simple? Well, it's so simple, even I can use it. Go to Gipper.com to get started. You're going to be glad that you did. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Jeremy, you talked a little bit about, how you ended up at Stevens Point Area Senior High School, but go into a little bit of those details. I think it's important for our listeners to hear about the journey that we all take. So, what was your journey after college?
Yeah, mine was definitely different. I've talked to some educators, and they've really been surprised at my journey. So, like as I mentioned, I graduated with a what's called a broad field social science, which is social studies and history and psychology. And I just could not find a job. I remember applying, that whole process where you're sending out tons and tons of applications, and you get some interviews, and it just always came up a little short. And at the time, I was married. I'd just recently been married about a year or so, and so I had to support family. So I decided to go out and look for a job outside of education, and I found a job that actually was looking for teachers. And it was a sales job, and it was working in construction, and they wanted people to go in and talk with their customers and educate them on the process. So they were looking for educators. So it actually was a pretty good fit, and I worked for them for 6 years. I was in management with them. I worked my way up through sales to management, and then I actually decided to make a switch. Along there, I'm like, hey, I'm going to try to go back to teaching. So I student taught for a full year, got some more interviews, and dabbled my foot back in my toe back in the water, and just it never worked out. And so I ended up deciding to leave that construction job, and I made a complete switch into banking. And I went into the financial world for basically the next 10 years. And that's what kind of brought us back to Stevens Point, as I worked at a bank here in Stevens Point, and then in the central Wisconsin area. And I was working with them for a long time. Well, I ended up, my whole department got laid off at the bank that I was with after a long period of time. And so I was kind of in between. And I'm like, well, now what do I do? Well, turns out that Stevens Point Area Senior High called, and they said, hey, we've got a business position open. Would you ever consider teaching finance? And I'm like, well, man, it's not what I went to school for, but I know it. I've done it for 10 years. So I said, hey, why not? I'll do it. I teach personal finance now. It's what I still do. I just got done teaching about bonds and investments to students. And I think it's a really great class. I think it applies to every population. I think it's an excellent one, and I'm glad we require it for graduation. But along with that, then I kind of transitioned into, I wanted to coach. So I started coaching football. And then they were like, hey, we have this assistant AD position open. Would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, definitely. I love sports, and it can get me around more of it. And so I've helped out for the last, I think it's 3.5 years now to this point. So, and I really enjoy it. And that's kind of what brought me to where I'm at today.
Now, you had that background, or you had that love of sports. I'm not going to say a
Mhm.
background. You kind of created that
I
background.
love it.
Coming on board under that umbrella of activities, which is a big umbrella. Okay.
Mhm.
What were some of the things that you immediately you just clicked, and what were maybe one or two things that, the expression, you don't know what you don't know? Share a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that you don't know is, when you come from the business world, things move at a different pace. And not to say that it's faster or slower, it's just a different pace, right? There's a different way that things get done. It's kind of hierarchical. Whereas when I came into the education world, there's a lot of different things that you had to satisfy this, and then you had to satisfy this and do that. It wasn't just, hey, go get this done, figure out a way to make it happen. And so that was definitely an adjustment, when you come to the educational world, because you have your stakeholders, your community members. It's not just about getting the task completed. It's about, did you do it the right way? And so that was definitely a little bit of an eye opener, not in a bad way. Like I said, it's just a different process. And so that definitely was something I had to kind of get accustomed to. But I will say overall, the people that I work with here in the building, the principal, Mr. Vollendorf, is just amazing. A lot of really good people took me under and helped me familiarize myself with the way that it works in education and made that process a little bit smoother. And I work with Dave Hauser right now, and he's the athletic director or the activities director, and he has been a great mentor, probably one of my best mentors so far up to this point, of kind of showing me what he's learned and what he's done in the field. So I don't know, it's hard to point to like one thing, but I definitely that procedural was a big eye opener. It's very different in the private sector versus the public sector.
Oh, no, absolutely. And even public school to private or independent school, that can be a big change
For
too.
sure.
Um, you've been in your position now for a few years, okay?
Mhm.
Taking your current knowledge base, what's something that you would write on a sticky note or put in an envelope to give to, the brand new activities director, Jeremy Castleberg, 3 years ago?
I think the biggest thing is I had been in a position where I was in management for a long time and I was kind of at the helm and it was up to me to make decisions. And so you start to kind of think sometimes that you know what you need to do. And I think what I would tell myself is like, understand what you don't know, right? And that's something as you get older, you learn more and more. And I'm more aware of the things that I'm not able to do, and I'm not, and that I just don't know. And that young bravado of like, oh yeah, I can do this. It's like, no, just ask for help. And that's the big thing is ask somebody else, because somebody else has probably done it and knows a good path, and at least you can find their path and then maybe modify it a little to fit your needs. But just asking for advice, I think, is a big thing that I would tell myself, my younger self, is don't be afraid to use somebody else's help.
And that's a great tip. It's a little preview of our AD toolbox at the end of the
Yes,
segment. So,
for sure.
good stuff. We're going to take another quick break, but we're going to be coming back. Our guest is Jeremy Castleberg. He's the Assistant Activities Director at the Stevens Point Area Senior High School. And that's in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So stick around. We're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and check out their interactive touchscreen video score tables and video boards. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to find out more information. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to the highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks on a fundraiser and ended up with little, if any, return? Well, stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraising platform out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms, but if you're looking for a fundraiser, look no more. Go to snapraise.com.
Yeah, I really like Huddle. I mean, Huddle has been great for our school. We use it for, I think, every sport almost. I know we use it for football, soccer, boys soccer. We use it for hockey, girls hockey. Um, yeah, there's a number of other ones I think I'm missing already, but and basketball. But really enjoy Huddle. It's made it so easy to I'll give you an example. I had a player that wanted to get recruited in football and made it so easy to clip things, share it to coaches. They allowed them to become recruitable at that point, which really helped. And so Huddle has been really good in assisting us not only with the player journey, but just with being able to teach them about the game. It's so much easier to show them and send them a quick message on their phone, like, hey, review this 30-second clip. And this is exactly what I'm talking about as a coach that I want you to do. And that just it reinforces the coaching so much better than just telling them, right? Or having to get everybody together. And so I really like what they do. They make it very user friendly. So Huddle's been great. The only thing that I would like is just I'll get to this when we talk about our school, but we're just such a spread out campus. I'd love to have more Huddle cameras. Right now we only have a couple, so we need more. That's all. But budgets, they dictate a lot. So
Well, our friends at Huddle will hear that. Who knows? They might help you out with that camera. Yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned the highlight videos. I'm old enough to remember putting together highlights for my players, old school, on VHS tapes and even DVDs. So yeah, absolutely right. Um, do y'all use Huddle? Do you use the streaming features at all to stream your games?
We do in our field house, yeah. So we have the Huddle Assist, and that's great too, where you can just pop it on and it's right there, and you schedule the games out so they start right on time. It's been really nice, especially during the COVID times when people couldn't come to the gyms. Huddle's been really a game changer. So yeah, we've been really really happy with them. I would strongly encourage a department to look into it because it gets a lot of really great features uh, that you don't already have. So I would encourage highly Huddle.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I know our friends at Huddle appreciate it. Now, you also mentioned when we weren't recording that you've used Snap.
Yeah, we actually use Snap. I've used it a few different times for non-school related items, and then I've also used it for school related items. So last year, I was not part of the coaching staff last year for football, but they used Snap Raise, and I've used it while we were there. But last year they set a record for the amount that they raised. And I think the best part about it is just really simple. The players go out and they get their 20, 30, 40, 50 emails. We try to have competitions like, hey, get as many as you can. Whoever gets the most emails wins a competition. But then Snap makes it just simple. Once you get those emails, you plug them in, they just do the whole process, and it makes it really easy for people that want to support the program. They can donate some money. That money then gets back, towards the athletic program, which makes, the fundraising goals happen, and that allows you to buy jerseys and all the other things that you use in for the team support. But Snap is just really simple, and that's what I like about it. It's not complicated. It's not selling something. It's just, hey, would you like to support the program? And it allows people to support at the level that they're comfortable supporting. That makes it really user friendly and takes a lot of weight off of a coaching staff.
Oh, and you're absolutely right. And again, yeah, I think you hit it on the head. It's simple, it's effective, and even somebody like me can use it. So thanks for sharing that. We're going to let our sponsors know about that. Let's get
Awesome.
back to the podcast. Our guest today is Jeremy Castleberg, and he's the Assistant Activities Director at Stevens Point Area Senior High School. That's in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Jeremy, one of the things that we take great pride in for the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What are some things that you do at Stevens Point in athletics and activities that you're particularly proud of that you can share with our listeners?
Well, one of the things we're really lucky at Spash is we have a number of really successful coaches, and we've tried to really bring coaches roundtables together that allow those coaches to connect with each other. For example, we have a coach that I would say is probably nationally renowned. I mean, he's been doing this for 45 years, I think it is, or 46 years. He's been coaching cross country. He wrote a book on it called The Animal Keepers, and he's been an amazing coach. He's got, I think, 13 state cross country titles. He's been to state, I think he's been there 42 times. I mean, he's an amazing coach when it comes to cross country, and just to pick his brain when you get all those coaches together, and we've got another coach that's in the Wisconsin Hall of Fame for basketball. You get them together and you just start to learn some of the things that they have and what they do, the camaraderie that builds there, and the best practices. And you can apply those things. Right now I help coach soccer, but I can take away what he does in cross country and I can bring that into my soccer team and for my girls. And And that's really valuable. And I know a lot of schools will do that. So I don't want to say we're the best at it, but we really try to bring our coaches together and create a network that, we can bounce off each other. For example, I just talked to my football coach today, and I'm like, hey, would we be able to borrow one of your huddle camera, your iPods for huddle? And he's like, oh yeah, for sure, no problem, right? It's like this give and take happens. It's not like my silo versus your silo, and it's all separated. I think there's a lot of camaraderie. A lot of them get together and play basketball in the morning. And so I just think it's really cool from that perspective. There's a mutual respect amongst the coaches, and we try to keep as many in house as we can. We do have outside the building coaches, but a lot of them are right here. We get to see each other all the time, and I think that's a really cool thing. If you can build that in your school, it really does help develop the programs.
Let me go and ask you a question about that. Again, 100 years ago, when I was in high school, we didn't know what an off-campus coach was.
Yeah.
Occasionally there might be a dad that helped out or an alum from a few years ago that had just gotten back from college. But our coaches were teachers in the building. And I've had some great, just Hall of Fame coaches who were community or walk-on coaches. But I think in a perfect world, we'd like to see our coaches in the building. What percentage of coaches do you have at Stevens Point that are in the building out of all the coaches that you have?
Would you include assistants, or are you just talking head coaches?
Well, let's start with head coaches. At my school,
Yeah.
which was an independent school in Tallahassee, just about every single one of our head coaches was on campus, which was great. We had some assistant coaches too, but I would say our overall percentage out of 80 coaches, we probably had maybe a third of our coaches program wide that were teachers or worked on campus. So 2/3 were coming from the community.
Yeah, I'd say that if I had just off the rough, I've never sat down and looked at each one, but I'd say roughly, I'd guess it's right around 2/3. I mean, I can think of like our head basketball coach is not a teacher. Our head soccer coach is not, for girls is not, and our boys is not. So boys soccer. So there's a few, but for the most part, they're either on campus or they're at the junior high school. So they're right here, and we get together a lot, which is, like I said, it's great. I really like it.
Hmm?
Sorry, that's our bell.
It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't have school bells going off. That's fine. Okay. And I always like to ask that question because I know I think the pendulum is swinging. I think principals and superintendents are beginning to remember or realize that there is value in hiring a great teacher who, oh, by the way, can coach
Yeah.
soccer or basketball or tennis or whatever it is. Um, Jeremy, you and I talked about this. You're, let's say, fairly new to the
Yeah.
world of athletics and activities administration, but you're aware of, because you were asking me questions about the NIAAA and then your own state association, WADA,
Mhm.
Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association. And again, you're at the start of your journey. What are some of your plans? Have you had a chance to attend your state conference? Are you trying to get your boss to send you down to Austin next December for the national conference? What are your, let's say, professional development plans in athletic administration?
Hey, jokingly, yeah, they can send me anywhere they'd like. I'd love to go to a conference, but in all seriousness, no, I would definitely like to start getting some of those certifications done. I have not been able to attend a WADA conference here in Wisconsin. I've been to some WIA conferences for athletic directors, but I have not been to the WADA one. But I'm hoping that is going to be starting next year, and I'll actually start getting some of those certifications. I know the CMMA is down the road as well, and so I definitely would like to start pursuing some of those. One thing for me, continuing education has always been really important. That's why I went back and got my master's. So I just kind of view this as that next step. It's kind of like becoming a master in this. And it's funny, when I learned that there was such a position as an athletic or an activities director, I was like, this sounds awesome, because when the schools I grew into, we didn't have such a thing, right? There was no job where you just got to work with all the sports. And I've always enjoyed, there's very few sports I don't enjoy. So for me, I look at this as like the best job, because you get to be involved in all the different sports. And so, yeah, I definitely want to start some of those processes. I know it's going to be a long road. It's not like you get certified immediately, but I'm willing for that challenge. That's something I'm really looking forward to, actually. So I'm hopeful the fall is going to be when that starts, and we'll kind of go from there.
All right. Well, again, talk to your boss, talk to your principal. Definitely go to that state conference. And who knows? They may send both of you down to Austin, Texas in December for the next
That'd be
national
great.
conference. Okay. Well, Jeremy, this has been really cool getting to know you. I'm so glad that you reached out. I can see that you definitely have a heart for athletics. You're going to make a great, you're an assistant activities director. You're going to make a great AD. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, as we just said, you're not an athletic director, but you certainly know your way around the world of sports. So we're going to take our final break, hear from a couple of our sponsors, including Athletic Surveys, who sponsor the Toolbox segment. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on the very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in the toolbox. So let's
Sounds
take
good.
that break. And when we come back, we're going to see what Jeremy Castleberg puts into his new athletic director toolbox. We'll be right back. We want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support of the podcast. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touch screen. That's right, touch screen video consoles. It's a great way to show off your school's best and brightest, brag a little bit about your school's history, and bring your school's legacy to life. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention the podcast and you'll get a nice discount. Vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to thank Home Campus, the exclusive high school and state association management platform. Uh, Home Campus is something that I used every day, and so will you. Things like scheduling, um, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? Communicating with coaches, with kids, with parents, with your state association, uploading rosters, uploading digital forms and signatures. If you're an athletic director, Home Campus is going to help you do your job better. And all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of our podcast. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Athletic Surveys is all about connections. They're going to connect you to the people you already hear from, those complainers, the ones that want to gripe about everything. But they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. Can you imagine having that type of information when you're meeting with a frustrated parent or a student athlete, or maybe your principal or even your school board? Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create that custom survey that will let you take the pulse of everybody in your program. Athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's now time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with a friend of the show, Jeremy Castleberg. He's the Assistant Activities Director at Stevens Point Area Senior High School. It's in Wisconsin. Is new to the world of athletic administration, but certainly knows his way around the athletic block. But right now, I'm going to challenge him to send out a brand new AD on his or her very first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 items in their toolbox. So, Jeremy, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Well, first of all, having read your athletic director's toolbox, I probably will have some that are carryovers, and I don't know if I'll have any that are drastically unique, but I really enjoy this portion of it because there's a lot of great tools that we can have. But one of the first ones that jumped into my head, and this kind of comes over from my business world where I had to deal with it being a manager, I had to deal with a lot of customer service issues. And so my first one is a poker face. And I think you really need a poker face because sometimes when you're talking to parents, things get really emotional and they get really heated. And you kind of have to have a stoic face, like it's just you know, don't show the emotion one way or the other. And I actually had this happen recently where I was with our activities director, Dave Hauser, and somebody came up to him and they're like, I just want to tell you that the refereeing in this game was terrible. And then, they're just going off. And he just kind of sat there and he said, I'm sorry you feel that way. And that was just it, right? And then we just moved on. And so I think a poker face is really important. You have to be able to acknowledge, listen, and there's a time and a place to show emotion, but I think there's times where you need to be able to just kind of show just no emotion. And so I think that's been kind of beneficial, one that I would definitely encourage people to at least have. Another one that I definitely think is, being able to work and have a really good team. I mean, I look at the way how complicated it's gotten to be an athletic director, and I watched Dave do his deal. And there is so many expertise levels that are needed. We're coming up on a referendum here, and so there's expertise around the business world and the community, and there's expertise needed for how to run social media. That's a world that didn't even exist, 15, 20 years ago, and it's expected. You have to have social media now, and so surround yourself with some people that are really passionate about those items and really experts in them, because I think they're going to make your life a whole lot easier and you don't have to be the expert. So I would say surround yourself with those people. The other is being organized. One of the challenges that we have in our school is that we are located here, but the only teams that play on campus are our basketball team, volleyball team, and our tennis team. Basically every game other than that is a road game, because hockey is off campus. It's 5 miles away. Girls hockey is like 15, 20. Sometimes it's in other communities. The baseball's off campus, softball's off campus. We don't have it on our campus, and so you've got to be really organized. You have to have a lot of people going a lot of different directions to be able to game manage, to be able to make sure the referees get checked in, and so being really, really organized. I've seen how important that is. You can't be chaotic. You got to have it buttoned down, and that is definitely something that not just in our job, but even if you have all those things on campus, you better be organized. And the last one, I think this one's really important. Athletic directors are under a tremendous amount of stress. I see, Dave under his stress, and I see how stressful it can be when you're at an event. I've been at some events that got really contentious, and so you had to manage the refs and you had to manage the fans. Take a moment and get some exercise. I think it's so valuable to relieve stress and to step away from this environment. As much as we love it, and which I do, I love it, and I know Dave loves it. But you got to step away, and I think it's really important to just give yourself some exercise and go, a healthy release, as it would. And so I really encourage. It doesn't have to be, something super strenuous. Maybe just go take a walk, or like today, we actually have almost 70-degree temperature in Wisconsin in February. Get outside, take a walk, move around. It just helps clear your mind, and I think that's really valuable. I think sometimes we forget that. I forget it too, but it's really important just to take a little moment, get some exercise, help clear the head. So those are my four.
I love it. I love the way you squeeze that fourth one in there. And, they're all so good. I love the exercise component. I remember walking by our weight room once, and one of our coaches was in there working out. And it was like, he thought I'd caught him doing something he shouldn't be doing. And it was his planning period. And I said, no, that's a great use of time in your planning period. You got to stay
Yeah.
healthy. So good stuff. And I'll go back and check the archives. We've done well over 500 interviews and asked
Wow.
for toolbox suggestions, closing in on about 2,000 total tool suggestions. Some have been
Wow.
repeated, but I think you might be the first that ever gave us a poker face. So I'm gonna have to check it, and I love it. It's absolutely true. Great stuff.
I've had to pull it
Jeremy,
out a few times.
we should have done this earlier, so shame on me. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out, maybe find out more about how you do things there at Stevens Point, or just add you to your network. And listeners, I
Mhm.
think you got a great resource here. Jeremy, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Well, I am on most social medias. I'm active on X or Twitter. My handle is Jeremy Castle B. The last two letters are not on there, the RG. But if you search Jeremy Castleberg, it'll pop up. Then that's my work one. And then I'm on LinkedIn, and so that's another great opportunity to connect. And you can always email me. I'd love to hear from you. My email is JCASTLEB, and then it's at Point Schools, and you got to have the S on the end there, pointschools.net. And if you'd like, you can put that in the show notes as well underneath, so people can see it. But yeah, that's a great place. I'd love to hear from you. And if any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And like I said, I'm new in the journey and I'm still learning, but I have a lot of different outside experience that sometimes is relevant as well, especially the business world. So especially if you're looking to do some fundraising or things like that, I have different perspectives on that as well. Just because coming from that world, I know what it's like when people ask and maybe how you can ask in a way that gets you some funds. So
Oh, absolutely. Great, great ideas. Well, Jeremy, thanks again for sharing with our listeners. All the best as you move forward. And I'm going to put the pressure on you. I'm going to look forward to seeing you in Austin in December.
that sounds great. Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a blast, and I really love what you're doing here. It's been really beneficial for me. That Athletic Tool Directors Toolbox is one of the first books I read when I got the job, and so I really appreciate it, and it's been giving me something to listen to. I love podcasts, so thank you for everything you do here.
Well, you're very kind to say that, and I'm glad you enjoyed the book. For our listeners, I'm glad that you're listening. And just a reminder, we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this a couple times a week with interviews and just about every day with some kind of new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We appreciate you listening. Come back next time. Thanks again for listening.